Hello, this is Debbie Foreman. I'm your host. Welcome back to GAPcast. This is our second segment, GAPTrix, where we talk about the frameworks from the previous reaction. So in the first reaction, we take famous people, infamous people on YouTube or other social media. Well, they talk about the gaps in life and culture, in the workplace, in personal development. And then in the second part, after that reaction, I bring in the framework. So what I'm going to do right now is we're going to go back to the original video, and then I'm going to start pulling up the framework for you guys to see. If you are starting here, what I suggest is to go back one, see the first one is the reaction, pure reaction, and then now you can see the framework in the second part after this. I'm going to run through most of this really quickly. It's only like a 3-minute segment. And then I'm going to talk about two portions.
Inflection point, as I define it, is something in the external environment that changes the assumptions upon which a business is based. It's often technology, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a change in social norms. It could be a change in a company's reputation. But the reason it's so important to see these things is that we all develop a view of the world, and our view of the world is really based on the assumptions that may have been true at one point, but those assumptions guide what we think is going to drive outcomes in our business.
All right, I'm going to talk solely about this part of assumptions. So what Rita was just talking about here is about the world of assumptions. And what is an assumption? And I'm going to run you through the framework, and we run this in businesses and organizations all the time. It sounds really silly, but if we put a team of people together and we talk about one assumption, and that assumption being the baseline of a process or an entire department, and we get everybody to do this, we put out, let's put the assumption out. So we're going to put an assumption. Assumption is that dogs like bones. Okay, I'm just putting an assumption out there. Whatever it may be, okay, for your company. Then we get everybody in a department or the multi-stakeholders to actually run through these same assignments. This is what happens. I know that I know. That is a given. You know that you know. You do not have to think about it. Your department doesn't have to think about it. Your team doesn't have to think about it. But does everybody know that they know the same assumption? Question number one. I know that I don't know. So there may be an assumption that everybody inside of an organization understands the assumption, but when it gets down to it, people go, oh, I know that I don't actually know what that assumption is, so the entire assumption goes down the drain. Did that make sense to you? I know that I don't know. Imagine that you have 50 people on a team and 15 of them say, I know that I don't know what that actual assumption means. That means your assumption is not solid and there's a gap in it. I don't know that I know. It could be that they don't know that they know because it's stored knowledge and it only comes out with the trigger. And so it's information is back there and they're like, yeah, I think so. I'm not quite sure. And then boom, a trigger comes. And when that trigger comes, they go, oh, now I know that I know. But if that assumption isn't clear and it's back in stored knowledge, then it needs to be brought to the forefront. And I don't know that I don't know. That means that they have no clue, never been like clued into it. There's an assumption. It's never been presented. It's a black hole. So when we run this through an organization, when we run this through multi-stakeholders, it looks like the easiest thing in the world. But then we compile this data, and then we start to see that how good is that assumption? How bad is that assumption? And where are the gaps within that assumption? Now, let's move that one step further along. Based on those assumptions, we get to the next part. What I am doing that I shouldn't be doing. That means you have an assumption. You shouldn't be doing certain things that you are doing because they're outdated, because they're not aligned to the assumption, because the process isn't working, but you're still doing it. What I am doing that I should be doing. Yay, congratulations. You're doing a great job because you're doing something you should be doing aligned to that assumption. Very well. Very good. What I am not doing that I shouldn't be doing. That's a good one. Because you're not doing something that you shouldn't be. So that means that's a positive also. But then here's the big one. What I am not doing that I should be doing. And what you're not doing is an omission. What you're not doing is something that's lacking. And what you are not doing is where that biggest gap is. Now, how does that fill out? Imagine you were to do this and we got a bunch of stakeholders, a bunch of people on the team working this together. So What I am not doing that I should be doing means I'm doing something wrong. It's time to fix this. What I am not doing that I shouldn't be doing. Yay, good job. So let's see how many people are doing the good job and how many people are, needing a fix, or the department or the assumption needs a fix. I know that I don't know. Do you need to upskill to overcome this? Is there a question? Is there a gap in the skill development within your organization? And finally, great. I know that I know. You're doing a great job. Now let's focus on the hard stuff. And maybe you need to take pressure off of that and move over to here or over to here. And so it looks like an easy framework. I mean, it's not hard, except people start flundering over it because everything's assumed. The assumptions are assumptions and they're assumed and they're not mapped out. Now I'm going to move one more over. As I had mentioned in the reaction, and I put a lot of emphasis on this in the reaction, is the following. Okay, she is talking about outcomes. And that is where a lot of companies flounder. Oh, our outcomes, and we didn't get the outcomes. Outcome is not the final stage. Outcome is not where the success comes from. Outcome is not what's going to get you to the finish line or keep you at the finish line. Why? Because if you do not have an impact fully and clearly defined, what impact do you need? What impact do you want? And where and how is that impact directly associated to a higher purpose? So first, there's a process of defining the purpose. Within that purpose, what impact do you expect and need to get? Because outcomes is a part of the impact. And so how does that work? Very simply, you got the impact. First, you have your purpose, define it. We're not doing that now. Define your impact. There is a process to go through, a framework to go through to define that impact. Once that purpose and impact, the two of them are defined, then we reverse engineer it. We go back to the beginning over here, and we're going to say, what inputs do I need? What inputs do I need to reach that impact? Both objective and subjective. That's data, that's information, opinions, assumptions, because a lot of assumptions are objective. A lot of assumptions are subjective, not necessarily only objective. Then I'm going to pull that out, and we're going to move over. Once I got the input, that input has to create an output. Well, what outputs do I have? Once again, objective outputs, that's hard data. Subjective is the interpretive version of that data. Those outputs are going to divide into two, and this is where a lot of people get into an ambiguous context of, and our results were not what we expected. Outcomes and results are often intertwined and considered the last stage of success. But they're not. Outcomes are the subjective interpretation of the goals that you have, and then the results are the metrics, the KPIs that measure and give evidence that those outcomes, OKRs, objective key results, were well developed, that's what you're trying to strive for. And when those two tie together and they align, they will bring you to your final impact. Okay. So in the previous video, go back to it if you want to see more, but I just really wanted to focus on these frameworks, the world of assumption and the world of outcome, because both of them, when they're not dealt with through a framework to get to the final purpose impact, gaps, and then you're going to plunder. I hope this has shed a light. If you want, you can take these two that I just did to test it within your organization. Give it a shot. Let us know how it worked out. I'm Debbie Foreman. This was GAPTrix. Don't forget to do the finger crawl to like, subscribe, and please comment. Give it a shot. See how this framework works for you, and then find out where those gaps are. Thanks for being here. I'll see you on the next one.